Alright everyone, this is Joseph, and welcome back to another model kit review. This time we're going to be going over the Gundam Astaroth from the anime Mobile Suit Gundam Blooded Orphans, which I haven't seen, unfortunately, but nevertheless, this is still a pretty cool looking model kit. As we can see from the box art, he has a gigantic sword, and yeah, that's about it. Here he is, he's a high grade, and yeah, let's build this thing. Also, before we begin, shout out to my cousin for buying me this model kit. He's actually the guy that got me into building Gundam model kits. Alright, now let's take a look at the runners on this guy. It's a pretty big amount, but once again, it's a high grade, so I'm not too concerned about the complexity. We got some instructions in here as well. Here's some art, or pictures, I guess, of what he's going to look like when he's done. Alright, let's build this thing. Alright, now I'm going to build this guy, and I will see you all once I've completed him. Well, take a look at all this mechanical detailing on this piece. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it once I cover it up, but look at that. It's got like a little spinal cord and all these little pistons everywhere. This looks great. Promising. Alright, I've finished building him, and here he is in all his glory. And I will say, he looks pretty good. For the painting, I did more of that smudging thing. And I haven't watched Blooded Orphans, but, that sounds like a pretty hardcore name, so I put some more, like, smudging and weathering. I went a little bit more heavier on it than the RX-782, which was my previous review. And as for the back as well, I put some more detail on everything. Most of it's been panel-lined. All the white parts have been panel-lined. The overall color scheme of this guy, of like the whites and the blues and these really nice little red things here, kind of make him look like a more, I guess, hardcore apocalyptic version of the RX-782, and these guys actually look really good together. As for the sculpting on this guy, it's pretty good. He's also got these awesome little like hip skirt guard things that look awesome. They kind of look like laser cannons themselves, like, don't they kind of look like laser cannons to you guys? Maybe they are laser cannons, I don't know, I haven't watched the show. Another awesome thing about this model kit too is it has this kind of unsymmetrical, that's a word, like design, like there's different parts, it looks, I don't know if this is part of the show or not, but it kind of gives him a sort of like scrapyard, like junkyard kind of, like it looks like he was made out of a bunch of different parts of different mobile suits, which maybe he was, I don't know. So I just looked it up and I was right. According to the Gundam Wiki, this guy, he was heavily damaged during the war. So they just put a bunch of other different parts of mobile suits onto him to make kind of Frankenstein's monster. There are some flaws which I'll talk about later, but this big hand shield thing looks really cool, actually. It kind of reminds me of, let's get a closer look at that here. It kind of reminds me a bit of Hellboy's hand from the movie Hellboy. I also, again, put some scratching and smudging detail on it because I'm assuming this is a shield of some sort. And some more smudging up here. And now let's talk about the problems that I have. First off is if we take a good look at his elbow and bend it in. Why this? It's really obvious that this is just a peg. And that kind of ruins the illusion. Maybe if they made it a bit more flush, and I understand that's kind of hard, but it just kind of breaks the illusion of there being little pipes and wires connecting the elbow. Another thing that personally bothers me is while I can see this design, it kind of looks like a bird, but like there's just something off about these feet. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're too long, maybe it's because of this big gap here, and I know it's supposed to look like that, but it just... And the biggest issue I have, and maybe it's just because I have a dirty mind, but look! He has a big giant dick, and I mean he's packed. I'm sorry, I can't. All right, robot aside, overall I think it's a really nice figure. And now let's talk about the big issue though that I had while building him: the stickers. I hate stickers. But okay, the thing is, unlike the RX-782, which had really small stickers, the stickers on him weren't that much of an issue. The only one that I really had a problem with were his eyes stickers, but those actually turned out pretty good, so it was worth it. These were easy to put on, and the other sticker, where was it? This was easy to put on. This was easy to put on. I mean, they were all pretty easy to put on, even though there were more. But thankfully they weren't that small, and so it made it much easier for me. Never mind, I take it back. These ones were really small. I just remembered that I had to put these on, but they were mildly easy. I had just a little bit of a struggle putting them on. So overall, his painting and sculpting is awesome, but you know what else is awesome? His accessories. So his first accessory is this little, I don't know, would you call this a trench knife? I don't know, that's what came to my mind when I saw this. And it has little brass knuckle parts here, which don't really do anything, but they look cool. And overall, this is a pretty cool looking knife. It's actually got a bit of a metallic glint to it, so I like that. And to have him hold his knife, you just take his fist, which has a little part, and you can just slide his knife in. And there we go. Don't mess with him. He'll cut you up. And if knives aren't your thing, you know, understandable, you can just take that out. And, you know, if you're more of one of them rednecks, you know, you want to use some of them guns, you have this little gun here, which is really nice. It kind of looks like the rifle from Evangelion, however the hell you pronounce it. And yeah, very nice. So to have him hold his rifle, it's a bit more complicated than the knife, but it's very similar to how most of these things work. You pop off the back of his hand, like so. If you could please come off. There we go. And you take his gun, you take the handle, you do that, and then you take his little back part of his hand, and you snap it back on, and just like that, there we go. We have his big gun. And while I think the gun is awesome, I just think there's something that feels kind of off about it when he holds it. I don't know, maybe it's because it kind of forces his shoulders forward, or I don't know. Also, he doesn't have trigger finger hands either, so that kind of ruins it. I think his gun is meant for more of a one-handed pose, which is kind of a shame, and I think the thing that's really limiting it is his big hand. But you know what? It still looks awesome with one hand, so I'll take it. Also, he doesn't come with any alternative hands, just two fists, and I guess his arm shield can count as one alternate hand. But his main feature is not a gun. But actually, before we do that, though, we got to take off this gun, so just do that. Ho ho ho! Merry Christmas, little boy! This guy's main accessory is this thing, which doesn't look that impressive until you... And as for the design of this sword, it's awesome. It's a really cool looking sci-fi sword, and it looks like a hybrid between the little trench knife and the actual sword. It's a really nice combination of the two things, of a sword and a knife, and I think it really turned out well. And now this guy is the cream of the crop. Look at this thing. Oh, well, it's even bigger than the actual model kit itself. Wow, this is an amazing sword. It's shiny, it's huge, and you know, it's amazing. That being said, though, there's the slight issue of the... But that's something a little bit of a filing can't fix off, but I'm not going to do that now. Much like the rifle, you're going to want to take the back part of his hand off, take the little gap to that left, and put this huge, hulking mass of a sword in his hand. And then you're going to want to seal the deal with the back part of his hand, like so. Wow, it's very hard with this huge sword. There we go. And this looks amazing. Until you lift the sword off the ground. Unfortunately, the weight and the really loose ball joint don't mix together, and you can't get a very good lifted sword pose with it, which kind of sucks. But you can still get some pretty cool looking brooding poses with it. So even though the sword not being able to lift off the ground any higher because it'll flop down is kind of a missed opportunity, it still looks really awesome. And taking the sword out is simply just remove the back part of the hand like the usual. The huge. And now let's discuss the weapon storage. But before we do that, we just gotta fold this thing back up like so. This is actually pretty fun to fold it up. And I can see why they put the safety nub, because that acts like a little tab here to tab it into place. Because if it wasn't there, then this thing will be like rattling around and flopping around a lot. So that makes sense, but it still kind of ruins the effect. Alright, weapon storage. First off, you're going to want to take his big sword, flip this little part out, move over to his backpack, and there's a little area here, and you just want to peg that in like so. Alternatively, you can also take it out, put it here, There's a little hole on the side of the sword that can be attached to this little, I don't know what you call this, and then just like that. And there we go. That looks a little bit more fluid. Here it is from the front. Looks very nice. As for storing his other weapons, he's either got to hold them or just you're going to have to put them somewhere and not lose them. So good luck with that. Alright, now let's talk about the articulation of this guy. The head is on a ball joint. He can look up this far and down this far. Shoulders are on a ball joint. They can move front and back as well as some up and down action. Bend at the elbow, which is kind of restricted by the arm shield. As for the hand under the arm shield, the thumb is on a kind of restricting ball joint. This finger is on a hinge joint like so, but it kind of drags down these other two fingers with him. And these two fingers, once again, on a hinge joint. His arm shield can rotate up to about here. I don't know exactly the degree angle, but it is cut off by this shoulder part. And it can be rotated the other way as well, once again cut off by the shoulder pad. The torso is on a ball joint. He can bend forward a little bit, and he can bend back pretty far, but, however, do it too far and he'll snap off because he's on a ball joint. The little hip skirts are on a hinge joint and can also be rotated, but they're cut off by the arms. This thing back here is also on a small hinge joint. He can do a pretty good kick. Once again, he's not really a gymnast, but this is still a decent range. As well as a bend at the knee, which goes back really far, actually. And unfortunately, though, his leg cannot move back that far, and often the knee just kind of gives away to bending. The ankle is on a ball joint. You can get a superb pivot with this, as it's this little ring thing here that helps that. And you can also get some meh front and back movement. Also, I guess this thing is technically articulation, if you want to call it that. So the little sword holder on his back can do a full 360. So overall, the posability on this guy is great. You can get a whole bunch of awesome looking poses with it. But the one warning I have, though, is most of his joints are ball joints. So if you're a bit too rough with him, you can tear his arm off really easily. And that can also disrupt his balance. But as long as you're careful with posing him, as you should be with any model kit, you should be fine. And now, for size comparison, here he is next to the High Grade RX-782, the Robot Masters Optimus Prime, and because I couldn't find the other figures, a Donkey Kong Pez dispenser. My final thoughts are, this is an awesome figure. He may not be for everyone, but he's certainly for me. I'll definitely put him up on my shelf. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and with that, I bid you all goodbye. And I know what this looks like. This kind of looks like Porygon from Pokemon.
Damn.